So, good morning, all. Today, we are going to start a new chapter on microwave systems. Other than this, one more chapter is still remaining, amplifier. So, after this, we'll start that, and if time permits, then we'll also cover a part of on devices, microwave devices. So, as the name suggests, when we go for microwave system design, so it starts from antenna to mixer. Basically, it contains all the front end components starting from antenna. Then we can have filter, then the amplifiers. It is low noise amplifier for the receiver, power amplifier for the transmitter, and then the mixer. So antenna to mixer, all of these components are designed at gigahertz frequencies. And after the mixer, it is now brought down to megahertz or kilohertz frequencies. So as a RF engineer, then our work will be concentrated only on this part. And this is known as the front end design of any wireless communication system. So when we go for wireless communication system design, how or what are the parameters and how actually we take into account, and what are the points we need to consider. So let's go one by one. Before that, we did not discuss about antenna in details. So some of the parameters we learned in practical class. So those parameters are important. Now, let us start our discussion with antenna, because antenna will be one of the most important element for any wireless system, and we can't avoid antenna, right? So we have to first learn about the antenna characteristics. So what are the parameters by which we can understand it's a good antenna or antenna, and the parameters will be defined by a system engineer depending on application. For some applications, okay, so let me first define the parameters, then maybe we'll discuss about applications. So in general, then what is the function of an antenna? It works like a transducer which change guided wave into space wave or the radiating wave, and that radiating wave it can propagate in space. So when we are going for earth communication, so the medium is air. So inside air, velocity of electromagnetic signal, it is, if you compare with that in free space, it is retarded by a factor of 1.0003. Okay, anyway, so we can approximate nearly 10 to the 3 into 10 to the power 8 meter per second. Now, when it propagates, then you already solved for the electric field and magnetic field for a plane wave. So it follows that relationship. That means electric field, magnetic field, and the direction of propagation, they fits in a right-handed orthogonal system. And also another important condition, that electric field and magnetic field, they are in the same phase. So that is very important. So where the electric field will appear at the same moment, at the same space, magnetic field peak will also appear. Well, so antenna, it is a reciprocal device. So that means if you use an antenna as a transmitter or as a receiver, its characteristics does not change. It remains the same. So one antenna then you can use as a transmitter as well as receiver. Antenna parameters will not change. Now, when an antenna is radiating, then the far field component of antenna, it can contain some theta component and some phi component. So we are mostly interested on the electric field, because electric field we can measure it directly. So that is why you will see that most of the time we speak about electric field. So if we can measure electric field, then magnetic field is related to it, and from that actually we can conclude what should be the magnetic field. So then E in r theta phi we have a theta component. Of course, that is a function of theta and phi because it will change with the direction. And the phi component, again, it is a function of theta and phi into e to the power minus j k naught r divided by r. So in the far field of an antenna, then electric field, it varies inversely with r. As you increase distance, electric field value will decrease. And in addition to that, we have a phase term. So as you increase distance from antenna, electrical phase, that also increases. Can you see my slide? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Showing some issue. Anyway, so once the electric field magnitude is calculated, then the corresponding magnetic field you can calculate. It is related by h phi equal to theta divided by eta naught. Eta naught is the free space impedance, and for air it is the wave impedance, and h theta, that is equal to minus e phi by eta naught. It is negative sign is due to change in direction. Then if we want to calculate radiation intensity, that is the electromagnetic wave which is passing through 1 square meter of area in perpendicular direction, then that can be represented by Ponting vector. You already learned this, E cross H star, watt per meter square. Now, electric field and magnetic field, if they are complex quantities, so you see, if they are complex quantity, that means they have some phase in between them. And in that case, you have to consider the real part. And if we take time average, then 1 by 2 real part of E cross H star, watt per meter square. Now, this part is important. So it should be complex, or it should be real or imaginary for free space propagation. So if it is complex, then as we see that it introduces some phase shift between electric field and magnetic field. So that means where the electric field peak is, magnetic field peak appears at some different location. So which is not desired because this type of wave can't propagate. Then for long range propagation, they should be in same phase. We should have only the real part. So if we draw the electric field and magnetic field along R radial direction starting from antenna, then in the vicinity of antenna, we actually have both of these two components, imaginary component and the real component. So this imaginary for the imaginary component, then they are actually in phase quadrature. Electric field and magnetic field, they are in phase quadrature. So in the vicinity of antenna, it is complex. So we have both real and imaginary component. But if we increase separation from antenna, in that case, only we will be having the real part, because we know that imaginary part can't propagate. So it is like in a resonator circuit, LC tank circuit, you know, current and voltage, they are in phase quadrature. So similar to that. Okay, so depending on then these two parameters, we define actually the part of radiating field into two regions. We divide them. One is called the near field of an antenna, and the second one term is called the far field of an antenna. So in the near field, as you can see in this figure, now actually there is no stringent specification where this near field changes to far field. But in antenna community, typically they consider this factor. If the distance is more than twice d square by lambda, we call it far field. So d is the maximum antenna dimension. So and lambda is the wavelength in the propagating medium. So in this case, it is air. Now, what do we mean by maximum antenna dimension? If I have a horn antenna, then its face looks like either a rectangle or a square. then I have to consider the diagonal length. D corresponds to the diagonal length. Well, so what happens here? So in free space, in the near field, actually we expect plane wave. But if you look in this figure carefully, first we have cylindrical or spherical wave depending on the antenna physical structure. And when you increase distance from antenna, then it slowly transforms to plane wave. Now, if the antenna beam width is given, then we will calculate over the beam width what is the phase error. So you can see in this figure. So beam width is shown here, and if I consider from the center point to left and right side, if this angle, this phase error is 22.5 degree, it is considered to be the interface between near field and far field. So these are a numerical value widely considered by antenna community. Anyway, so you should learn the basic antenna parameters from any textbook on antenna. So here let us discuss about some most of the important parameters. So one of them is half power beam width or 3 dB beam width. So antenna, it radiates power in one direction, in the desired direction. Now, if you look at the radiation pattern, so if I plot actually how much power it is radiating with angle, then we have actually the pattern, we call it radiation pattern. So it is plot of E square. Now, if I look in this figure, the antenna, it is propagating, it is radiating in the desired direction. Here it is shown by a vertical line. We call this one main lobe. Along with the main lobe, we also have some undesired side lobes. And in between two lobes, the radiated field component is 0. So in particular this direction, it is not radiating anything. So let me show it by using one arrow. So for example, for this antenna, it is not radiating anything in this direction. So we call it null position. Now beam width we can define in many ways. One is the 3 dB beam width or half power beam width. So we consider what is the maximum power it is radiating in this direction, and left and right side you go down by 3 dB. Then the angle between these two, it is called the half power beam width. In some applications, they define it first null to first null beam width. So this one to this one. So what is the angle between these two nulls? It is called the first null beam width. Next, radiation intensity. It is defined as power radiated from an antenna per unit solid angle in a given direction. So radiation intensity depends on direction. Then the directivity, ratio of the radiation intensity in a given direction from the antenna to the radiation intensity averaged over all direction in a okay, so averaged over all direction means you can compare the radiation intensity of the given antenna with that of an isotropic antenna. So for an isotropic antenna, if I excite it, it will radiate in all direction equally over a sphere. Now practical antenna, it has some loss. So if I include that loss into my calculation, then actual directivity decreases, and it is represented by gain of the antenna. So gain is defined as 4 pi into radiation intensity divided by total input accepted power, and the power accepted by antenna. Another important term is polarization. So it is simply the direction of electric field. Now polarization or the direction of electric field, it can be stable with respect to time in a given direction. Let's say the wave is propagating in X direction and the electric field is in Y direction. So it is fixed over time. So for this type of antenna or polarization, we call linearly polarized antenna. or linear polarization. And for some antennas, it actually rotates with time. As it propagates, it rotates about the axis. In that case, we can have circular polarization if radius remains same or the electric field intensity remains same. If I draw the locus of electric field, or it can be also elliptic polarization when it is not same. Well, now, as I said that the antenna parameters, it depends on application. We can take the application of mobile phone. For base station, it should not radiate anything upward because all the users, everyone on ground. So it requires to radiate in 360 degree over 360 degree angle, but only in horizontal direction. So if I radiation pattern, actually it's a 3D pattern. Then for base station antenna, radiation pattern should be suppressed in vertical direction, but it should cover whole 360 degree in horizontal direction. Now for your mobile phone, we can hold the phone straight, or we can even change our direction, and all the time we need communication with the base station. So that means for mobile phone the requirement is completely different. For your phone, then it should radiate equally in all direction. Now consider a satellite antenna. So you have one antenna placed on ground, another one on the satellite. Then we know that in other places we don't have any requirement. So we need to direct our energy to satellite only. So in this case, both in vertical direction and both in horizontal plane, or better to say in theta plane and phi plane, we need narrow beam width, right? So it depends on application. Next, aperture efficiency and effective aperture, some concept. So let's say we have an antenna and its physical area is given as A. So you designed a patch antenna, then for patch antenna, it is the size of the patch, this A. For a reflector antenna, parabolic reflector, then you have to consider the aperture of the parabola. For horn antenna, then it is the mouth of the horn, area of the mouth of the horn, or the aperture. Well, so Dmax, maximum directivity that can be obtained from electrically large aperture, it is theoretical limit is 4 pi a divided by lambda square. Now, if I want to increase directivity, okay, so I can refer to this figure. For satellite communication, for example, we want to radiate only in one direction. So we need very narrow beam width. So if I narrow down the beam width, so that means directivity will automatically increase. So for this type of application, then we need to increase the directivity of the antenna, both in theta plane and phi plane. Then Dmax, which is in the desired direction of radiation, it is related to A by this relationship. But practically, this D value, it is much less compared to this, because we have other issues, loss from the antenna, then the aperture distribution of electric field, it is not uniform, practically it cannot be. So then practically it is just a percentage of this D max, and this practical D, then we can represent it by a fraction multiplied with 4 pi a by lambda square. So this eta, this fraction, we call it aperture efficiency, and it will be always less than 1. Typically for the aperture antennas, this eta value is high, and horn antenna particularly, this eta can be as high as 0.9 or more than that, or in percentage 90% or more. But for planar antennas like patch antenna, usually it's very small, 50 to 60% just. So you should remember this value. Now, for a receiving antenna, considering effective aperture as AE, then received power, it is AE into S average. What is S average? It is actually the radiation intensity at the receiving point. So radiation intensity or S average, it is per square meter. Now, if effective aperture is AE, then the received power is AE into S average. Then maximum effective aperture area of an antenna. So basically we are rewriting the first equation. It is the theoretical limit. AE equal to d lambda square by 4 pi. Well, now when we use an antenna for practical application, you know that antenna is represented by its equivalent noise temperature, TE. So that is defined by the antenna as a lossy element. So for any passive components, we have thermal noise, and that is also true for antenna. So antenna will have some thermal noise, and it will be represented by equivalent noise temperature. Now, other than the antenna, if we have external source of noise, which actually we discussed in details in noise chapter, then it will increase the equivalent noise temperature of your antenna, because some noise also coming from external sources. Now these external sources, they can be also modeled by some equivalent noise temperature. So here some examples are given. So sky, if you look into sky, then some noise coming from sky. So any undesired signal, we call that is noise for our system. Then for sky, if I change the direction, you see then the radiation and this undesired radiation which is coming from sky, it changes. So toward zenith, equivalent noise temperature is 3 to 5 Kelvin, whereas toward horizon it is 50 to 100 Kelvin. Now for ground also it is at some physical temperature. So if we look into ground, then ground is radiating according to black body radiation law. So its effective temperature is 290 to 300 Kelvin. So sometimes it is called brightness of that surface. So if you look into some building also radiating some electromagnetic wave. So it is not just radiating electromagnetic wave, it's a series of spectrum. And as I said, for ground or building or any other object near at room temperature, the radiation peak of that black body radiation, it falls in the infrared range. But not that it is only radiating infrared frequency. It will also radiate some millimeter wave and microwave frequency band. So that means this noise temperature or this brightness, whatever we are representing by some equivalent temperature here, that would change with frequency. So if this value is over microwave frequency range, now if I consider 100 gigahertz or 300 gigahertz, these values will change. Well, here is transmission equation. So Phillips equation we learned for a cascaded system when we calculated the equivalent noise figure of the receiver or of a cascaded chain. Now here we learn Phillips equation for transmission. This is not related to noise. This is related to received power for any wireless system. Also, before coming to the final expression, let's see how that final expression actually is derived. So power density radiated by an isotropic antenna. As I said, isotropic antenna, its gain is or directivity is 0 dB. It radiates in all the direction equally. So if I consider a sphere surrounding that isotropic antenna, and the antenna is sitting at the center of the sphere, then on the surface of the sphere, we can define one square area, and the power then going through the square area is average, that is equal to PT, total power radiated by the isotropic antenna, divided by area of the sphere, 4 pi r square, watt per meter square. Then antenna, practical antenna will have some gain. Let's say gain of the transmit antenna is GT. Then it will direct that power in one direction, and the power density radiated by an antenna with gain GT, then it is GT into PT divided by 4 pi r square. So this term PT into GT, it is called the effective isotropic radiated power. Anyway, now this power falls on the receiving antenna, and let's say the receiving antenna has an effective area AE. Then what is the value of PR? Received power AE into S average, or GT PTAE divided by 4 pi r square. Now receiving antenna, it will have some loss. So considering that, then it is we can put this expression which we learned here, eta and in terms of A. So using that formula, it is becoming okay. Eta I did not include here, so keeping as GR. Okay, in the GR actually it is included. This eta cap, it is included in GR. So then it is becoming GT lambda square divided by 4 pi whole squared into PT. So now we have a relationship between PR and PT. So PR by PT, it is proportional to gain of the antennas lambda square and inversely proportional to R square. So if I increase distance, then the received power, it decreases with 1 by R square. And not only that, what we see that if I change the operating frequency, then also received power decreases if other parameters remain same. So if I consider some transmission at 1 gigahertz and at 10 gigahertz lambda is 10 times smaller, so received power will be 100 times smaller. But this lambda variation we can compensate by changing the aperture, because the aperture is defined with respect to the operating wavelength. Now at 1 gigahertz, if the antenna size is, let's say, 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter, so at 10 gigahertz I have to keep it same, 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter, to compensate the effect of lambda. Then lambda effect is compensated if I keep the area same. But this R we cannot. So you have, so if I then increase separation between the transmit and receive antennas, then loss will increase and received power will be much less. Well, so this loss, this term lambda by 4 pi r whole squared, it is actually called the path loss. Okay, just 1 minute. Okay, sorry about that. Anyway, so we have this expression then, PR by PT equal to this. Now we can convert it to decibel scale. In decibel scale, we have the advantage that this multiplication term, it becomes simply plus summation. So when we represent each of them in decibel scale, it is then PT in dB plus GT GR 20 log 10 lambda by 4R. So this is called the Phillips transmission equation. And now when we derive this expression, Phillips transmission equation, what we consider ideal scenario. That means the separation between the transmitting and receiving antenna, it is much more than lambda. The antennas, they are unobstructed and there is no multipath effect or no atmospheric scattering or attenuation effect. But in practice, this multipath effect, it becomes an important issue. You can consider again your mobile phone example. Let's say we are speaking over phone inside a room. Now you don't have any direct link with the base station. You can't see the base station from inside the room. Then how you are getting the signal? It is actually due to multipath effect. So we have both diffraction and multipath. So your wall surface, then earth surface, even trees, they will all reflect signal power. So it is somewhat similar to sunlight. Now you can see everything illuminated inside your room. So the same thing is true for mobile base station. And in fact, for your mobile base station, this illumination is more uniform. Why? Because its wavelength is much higher. And you know that in diffraction theory, any wave, when it is obstructed, it tries to bend around it. Now this bending will be effective when the obstruction size is comparable to lambda. So that means, let's say if you have a 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi link, and if you stand between the transmitter and receiver, then you will not create as such. Of course, it will create some attenuation, but not that you can completely block the signal, because your dimension, body dimension, is comparable to lambda. Now, if I change from 2.4 gigahertz to, let's say, 77 gigahertz for the same Wi-Fi link, now if you stand in between transmitter and receiver, then you will significantly block radiation. And in that case also we have some diffraction effect, but compared to previous case, now you can actually attenuate the signal by 20 to 30 dB because of your body obstruction. So it depends on operating frequency and the size of the obstruction. Well, we also did not consider any feed line loss. When we excite any antenna by using cable, we will be having some loss inside the cable as well as return loss of the antenna. So not that 100% power is accepted by antenna, we have some impedance mismatch. Well, then next one, we considered only one lambda value. So this approximation is valid only for narrowband situation. If we have wideband scenario, then lambda is changing over the bandwidth. So that means this is true for only CW communication, no pulse case. Then the form will be different. So these above conditions, it is achieved only in free space or inside anechoic chamber. So we have one anechoic chamber in our department. So this chamber of the anechoic, the wall of the anechoic chamber, it is specially made so that nothing is reflected from the wall. Any electromagnetic signal, it's not better to say it is down by 70 to 80 dB, the reflection component. And from outside also, we don't have any interference inside the room. Well, at least some of the terms we can include in Phillips equation. For example, if we know the return loss or gamma value, then we can include that in the expression. And if we have some attenuation, atmospheric attenuation, that term also can be included in the expression. Other than that, one more factor we did not consider, polarization mismatch. What that means? So now you actually have drawn co-polarization pattern and cross-polarization pattern for antennas. So you know that, let's say, transmitter and receiver both are dipole antenna. Now if I take a half wavelength wire dipole antenna, If the dipole where it is in horizontal direction, then the electric field, radiated electric field, it will be also in vertical direction. Sorry, I said dipole where it is in vertical direction, then the radiated electric field should be also in vertical direction. It is parallel to where. Now, receiving antenna, if you want to receive maximum power, it should be properly aligned with the transmitting antenna. Since transmitting antenna, it is in vertical direction, receiving antenna should be also in vertical direction. Now, if you have some tilt between this transmitter and receiver, then it will just receive a component in the transmitter direction. So when I rotate it by 90 degree, so let's say the transmitter it is in vertical, but receiving antenna it is in horizontal direction. Ideally, it should not receive any power because it is becoming perpendicular. So that is called polarization mismatch. Now, in this expression, we are rewriting it by considering GT/GR as function of theta and phi. Then we are also including the effect of gamma T and gamma R. So 1 minus gamma T square, that is the power accepted by the antenna, 1 minus gamma R square by the receiver, and AT and AR, they represent the polarization direction. Well, then again, it is valid only in free space and inside anechoic chamber, because we did not consider multipath effect. Well, so in practical scenario, for your mobile phone base station problem or Wi-Fi link, actually modeling of this received power, it is very complicated. And it is a research topic, in fact. We call it channel modeling. In general, what we do, that PR by PT, it is proportional to lambda by R to the power n. So from Phillips equation, n is equal to 2. But practically we see that it can be somewhere between 2.5 to 4 or 5. It depends on many other conditions. Inside the room, let's say a classroom like situation, then office building, then another one inside our home, we have furnitures of different sizes, so it widely varies. So mostly we do some experiment, take some data, and from that we try to calculate what should be the value of n. Now let's say you are designing a wireless link, then what are the factors you should consider? You have to maintain some minimum signal level at the receiving antenna, and that minimum signal level is defined by the SNR requirement. I'm coming to that point later. Let us first consider what are the external factors. Well, one thing is the path loss, where we don't have any control, and this path loss, it is now we are considering loss, so I just interchanged R and lambda. So path loss, it is proportional to R square and inversely proportional to lambda square. We are calling it now loss. So path loss, it is fixed, we don't have any control. Now, what are the parameters we can take into account when going for system design? One is the transmit power, PT, how much power you will be transmitting. Then transmit antenna line loss, that the feed line loss, LT. So it is a loss for my system. So we are denoting it by negative sign. Transmit antenna gain. So higher the gain, then received power increases. We are denoting it by plus sign. Free space path loss, that this expression, let us represent it by L naught. So it is a loss, then minus sign. Atmospheric attenuation, minus LA. Receive antenna gain, GR, it is plus, and receive antenna line loss, minus LR. So if we know all these parameters, then we can calculate what is the received power PR. Then PR can be given by PT plus GT plus GR. So here, okay, minus LT plus LR minus the PLR. PLR actually here we denoted it by L naught. Anyway, so this is the path loss PLR in dB. Now this PR requirement comes from where? It comes from again other two factors. One is the SNR requirement and another one is the link margin. Okay, I'm coming to these 2 points. So the received power level should be greater than the threshold level specified by a minimum carrier to noise ratio or SNR. So this difference we call it link margin, PR minus PR minimum. So why we put some link margin? Because you can consider again your mobile phone example. Now the receiver or the user, let's say I'm calculating for the base station, its range is 1 kilometer. Now, sorry, the user can be anywhere at 1 kilometer radius. Situation will be different. Someone is speaking from free space, over open field. Someone is speaking from inside the room at 1 kilometer. So if I consider all this different situation, then if we now from system point of view, let's say I need at least minus 80 dBm of power at the receiver to decode the signal, minus 80 dBm of power. Now if I consider different situation at 1 kilometer, then if we say, let's say, okay, if you give me minus 70 dBm of power, then at 1 kilometer at every situation all the user can receive. So that 10 dB difference we call then the link margin. So this minimum value should be maintained over the minimum requirement of received power. That is called the link margin. Okay, I think you understood what is link margin. Let us better take one example. So here, let's say we have a geostationary satellite. It is operating over 35 to 36 gigahertz band, and the transmit power is given 120 watt. Transmit antenna gain 34 dB, IF bandwidth 20 megahertz, maximum distance 39,000 kilometer, receiving antenna gain 30 dB, and effective temperature of the antenna is 100 Kelvin. Now required minimum SNR is given 10 dB. Then check for link margin, suggested minimum value is 3 dB. For satellite communication, it is only changed by the atmospheric condition. When we have heavy rain, then actually signal is attenuated and we need some minimum value to withstand this type of situation. Clear weather, then adverse weather, we don't want to lose the link. So then link margin will be defined by the weather condition. Anyway, so we have the SNR requirement. We will start from the thermal noise floor. Well, so what is the minimum SNR required then? Actually 10 dB SNR it is by the system. Along with that, we need to maintain a 3 dB link margin. So actual SNR requirement, it becomes then 13 dB. Then path loss due to 39,000 kilometer and lambda, you consider it in free space, then we have to consider at the mid-band frequency 35.5 gigahertz. So you calculate the lambda at 35.5 gigahertz and put the values here and check it later. So path loss is coming 215.3 dB. It's quite high. Anyway, distance is also very big, large. PT transmit power is 120 watt. If we convert it to dBm, so it is coming 50.8 dBm. Then received power, we just use this formula which we learned here. So put the values, received power, then sorry, PT, GT, gain antenna gain GT 34 minus path loss 215.3 plus the receiving antenna gain 30 dB. So it's coming minus 100.5 dBm, or in watt 8.91 into 10 to the power minus 14 watt. It's quite low. Well, then let us calculate SNR at the output. That means it is actually at the output of the receiving antenna. So SNR is the PR divided by KTEB. PR already we calculated. TE is given 100 Kelvin, and K, you know, 1.38 into 10 to the power minus 23. And B, as I said, that B is defined by the IF bandwidth. So put 20 into 10 to the power 6, it's coming 5.09 dB. So it is not maintained. So only option, then you have to increase transmit power. Because here SNR, it's coming 5.09 dB, but requirement is 13 dB. We have to increase it. Well, other than these parameters, you in communication class, I think you already learned Shannon law, channel capacity. It depends on many factors. Among them, one of the important factor is the SNR requirement. Now this SNR requirement, it depends on your data rate and also the modulation scheme. Now for we are considering different well-known digital modulation. I'm not sure already you learned this or not. In short, let's say this is the message signal 1010 bit. It's at low frequency. You want to transmit this signal with some sort of modulation at gigahertz frequencies. Sorry. So for 2.4 gigahertz channel, then 2.4 gigahertz we are using as the carrier frequency. Now we can have different types of modulation. The first one is called amplitude shift keying. It is like on off. So when we have 1, we transmit, keep the switch, let's say, on, and when 0, it is off. It is like 1010 on off modulation. Now for ASK, we are playing with amplitude. We can do the same thing by using 2 different frequencies. So for 1, let's say frequency, we are transmitting frequency F1, and for 0, we are transmitting a different frequency F2. So it is called then frequency shift keying, FSK. Now already we used amplitude, frequency. It can be also done with the phase. So any change from 1 to 0 or 0 to 1 will be represented by a change of phase. So in this example, we are representing it by a change of phase of 180 degree. So these are different modulation scheme, and in Wi-Fi we actually use CAM, quadrature amplitude modulation. So we do both phase modulation and amplitude modulation. Now, if you look at the bit error rate, so okay, before that, let us define a few terms. Bit error probability. It depends PB. It depends on the ratio of received bit energy EB to noise power density in that channel N naught. Now let's say S is the received signal power, carrier power. Then EB is equal to S into TB. So TB is the duration over which the bit is on. It is the bit period. And if RB is the bit rate, then TB is equal to 1 by RB. So EB can be represented by S by RB watt second. Then signal to noise ratio for that bit, EB by N naught, just put the value, it is STB by N naught, or in terms of RB also we can represent S by N naught into RB. Now if some bandwidth is given, then instead of small n naught, you put capital N by B. So capital N is the total noise power over a bandwidth of B hertz. Well, now this bit error probability, it has some requirement. For wireless channel, standard value is 10 to the power minus 5. For wired channel, it is considered 10 to the power minus 8. Now, if I consider for wireless channel, 10 to the power minus 5 is shown by this line. Now, along X, we are plotting EB by N naught. So this is the minimum SNR required for to maintain this bit error probability. Now, if I change the modulation scheme, you see for ASK, we need to maintain highest SNR for the same data rate, for the same frequency. But instead of ASK or PSK, if we use binary phase shift keying, which I have shown previously, or QPSK, phase shift keying, then the energy requirement is much less. So this is the advantage of BPSK or QPSK over ASK and PSK. So for, sorry, it should be FSK, not PSK, sorry. This should be FSK. Anyway, so we see that for BPSK and QPSK, energy requirement is minimum. So what is the conclusion till this point then? That SNR requirement, it also depend on modulation scheme. What type of digital modulation you are using? Here is a chart, bandwidth efficiency and SNR requirement for different modulation scheme. So what is bandwidth efficiency? In simple, let's say Wi-Fi band at 2.4, 85 megahertz only allocated to you. Then if I use 85 megahertz, let's say my data speed is 85 Mbps, then we'll call bandwidth efficiency 1. We can actually go up for over 85 megahertz. Theoretically, data rate can be infinity. It is only limited by the SNR requirement. So for example, QPS, the same 85 megahertz we can use for 85 multiplied by 2. So 170 Mbps. For CAM, so it is one of the reasons why CAM is used for Wi-Fi. You see, we can further increase it, bandwidth efficiency. So in this example, it's showing 4 or 6. For 64 CAM, it is 6. Now for 5G, Qualcomm, they are actually going further higher, 256 CAM. So they designed one wireless router which is using a much higher order CAM, 256 CAM. But at the same time, energy requirement also increases. You need to maintain at least this value of SNR for PV equal to 10 to the power minus 5. Anyway, so if I compare bandwidth efficiency, energy requirement, everything, it seems that CAM is the best option. So that's why for Wi-Fi, CAM is being used. Okay, so this one maybe later we'll solve. We don't have enough time. Now let us take a few questions. You can switch on and ask me question. Switch on your microphone and ask.
So when we are defining gain, so we are taking the radiation intensity in the direction of the main lobe, right?
Yes.
And then so we are dividing it by, like, so if we consider gain to be output power by input power, then it would actually be low. But we are assuming that for a certain area, the radiation intensity is maximum, which is reaching the receiving antenna, right?
No, just one correction. So when we define directivity or gain, it is with respect to any angle. So for the radiation pattern, in fact, you can plot gain versus angle instead of E square, gain versus angle. Now in the main lobe direction, we call it G max or D max, maximum gain or peak gain. Okay, so gain is a in general function of theta and phi. Yeah, please go on.
And sir, gain and directivity only differ by 4 pi. Is that right?
No. The difference between gain and directivity is that in directivity we do not include loss in the antenna structure. Antenna is a one port device, right? Now when you are connecting the antenna to some RF source, you consider from the source point of view. So from source, power is coming through the cable, we have some cable loss. Then when you are looking into the antenna at the feed point, you have finite gamma, right? S11 of the antenna. So we have some return loss. So a fraction of power is being accepted by the antenna. Now, not that whole of this power it will radiate. So antenna itself has some loss. Okay. So if I consider that loss in the antenna, then we call it gain. And if we don't consider the loss in our calculation, we call it directivity. So directivity D, that is equal to some constant which is less than 1, let's say K, gain G equal to K into D. Gain G, it is equal to K some fraction into D.
Okay, sir. So, sir, for gain, we are also considering the return loss and other
No,
losses.
no, no, no. Return
Okay,
loss we are not considering. Only loss in
only
the antenna structure.
antenna. Okay, sir.
So
Sir,
that is the reason. Yeah, just hold on. That is the reason actually why we wrote 1 minus gamma t square into 1 minus gamma square, even though we use this GT and GR. Yes,
sir, gain can also be defined with respect to an isotropic antenna, right?
yes,
Like
yes,
in both
yes.
cases, gain is the same quantity, right?
Yeah, you see, gain even for the directivity also it is with respect to isotropic antenna. Now directivity you multiply by that fraction, then it becomes gain. That is only difference. So gain is proportional to directivity.
Okay, sir.
Sir, in the first equation, means while you were explaining.
Last part I could not hear. Please repeat.
Yes, sir. So while we converted AE to lambda, means A in terms of lambda, then, sir, you told that if lambda increases, then we should increase AE to compensate for it, right?
Yes, yes.
But we instead of writing A, we replaced it by lambda. So does GR includes the term about area and all? Means in the
Yes,
next slide.
yes. GR. So actually, then if I increase lambda, area with respect to lambda, then your gain value will increase. So gain depends on the effective aperture. Effective aperture also depends on your physical aperture. So that is why if we need very high gain, we go for antenna arrays. Instead of one single radiating element, we use multiple of them so that I can increase my aperture. So, or I can increase the gain. Sorry. So parabolic reflector, that is another way. So in that case, we have to consider the cross section of the parabola, that parabolic reflector, dish antenna. That is another way to increase the effective aperture. So for satellite communication, okay, just one information. For satellite communication, gain requirement is so high. You might have seen some big antenna, at least in picture. Diameter can be 40 meter, 50 meter, that big, 30 meter diameter. So antenna, now you can imagine, let's say you are operating at 10 gigahertz. So what is the area of your antenna? in terms of lambda. So that is the only way. Actually, we can use array antenna, but the problem is that if I increase number of array element, then your loss will also increase. So if you don't need like phased array, if you don't need to change your beam direction, then we try to avoid array and use instead a parabolic reflector. Yes.
Sir, and GT and GR are power gains or voltage gains means while we are expressing in dB.
Okay, whenever in dB, I discussed many times this point. Whenever in decibel scale, it is always power gain. Even in your basic electronics class, you recall you called it voltage gain when you actually plotted V0 by Vi. But when you convert it to dB, you took 20 log 10, 20. Why? Because it is power gain. Even though you are calling voltage gain in dB, but that is the wrong word actually. That is power gain. In decibel scale, everywhere it is power gain. So in this expression, you might have seen, you see, 20, we use 20 log lambda by 4 pi square. Originally it is 10 log 10. So two factor came because of the square. So always it is power in decibel scale.
Sir, so GT would be 10 log of 10 GT, right?
Yes. Power I said, no? And they are also, when we plot radiation pattern, it is not E, it is E square. If you don't, you can plot directly gain versus angle, but for that you need one reference antenna. Now, without using reference antenna, when you are plotting normalized,
So you are not audible.
yeah, any other question? Okay, so just one announcement. Next Wednesday, that means 18th November, we will be having MCQ type test for your lab exam, lab part, after simulation, all the hardware part. And this Saturday, that means 14th of November, we'll be having one MCQ test from the theory part. So theory part will be starting from impedance tuning and matching network till noise and nonlinearities. So this system, and before this we learned mix.
Sir, you're muted.
Starting from impedance matching and tuning to till noise and nonlinearities. So mixer and system is not included for this Saturday test. Okay.